Awez, and today we're reacting to The Geopolitics of the Mexican Cartel by OBF. I don't think there's anything more to say about the Mexican cartel other than they're dangerous, well connected, and they're everywhere. So without further ado, comment, like, subscribe, let's start 'em.
This is a map of the territories controlled by cartels in Mexico. The two major ones are the Sinaloa Cartel and the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, otherwise known as the CJNG. These territories might look somewhat scattered and random, but it's not by chance these territories are where they are. I'll explain that soon, but if we zoom out, you'll notice I've highlighted some nations in different colors, and that's because they are all part of what I like to call the geopolitics of the cartels. This is not just the story of how cartels work, it's the geopolitics involved in what they do. And while their primary business revolves around drugs, if you thought they stopped there, you're in for a rude awakening. The cartels continue to systemically seek to take over the entire vertical chain of several economies in Mexico, and not just illegal ones. But you might be confused why China is highlighted on this map. And that's because they are a key partner in this whole scheme for two very different reasons. But I'll talk about that later in the video. For now, let me direct your attention to Latin America, more specifically Colombia. Colombia is the #1 producer of cocaine, since the coca plant that eventually becomes cocaine requires very specific growing conditions: high altitude, tropical climate, acidic soils, and certain temperature and humidity ranges. The perfect mix of these conditions are found pretty much only in Colombia, Peru, and Bolivia, but not in Mexico. So the cartels have to buy the finished cocaine product in bulk from Colombian trafficking groups. After the product has been made through a quite extensive process, the Colombian traffickers transport it, usually via boat or semi-submersible submarines, to Central America, places like Honduras, Guatemala.
So that's why Pablo Escobar was so powerful. Okay. Why is he Mexican? No, I think it was Colombian. Yeah, I don't know much. I don't remember much about people's ethnicity, bro. I ain't gonna lie to you. Um, yeah, but it's crazy though. But what do you think they want to do with China?
Southern Mexico. Then the Mexican cartels step in. They act as the middlemen. Their job is to get the product from Central America into the US. Many methods have been used to accomplish this. Trucks literally going through the US-Mexico border, knowing that if you just send a lot of them, some, if not most, will slip through. This is the preferred method of the CJNG. But there's of course also the infamous tunnels of the Sinaloa cartel, carefully dug to avoid any detection and to link up with commercial warehouses on both sides, making loading and unloading almost too easy. These tunnels are a major part in why the cartels have immense interest in controlling the largest possible territory along the US-Mexico border. Another reason for that is the other method. See, recently drones have been used to fly in products, and you might say, drones? Those must be the most obvious targets. How could those ever slip through? Well, it's a numbers game, and drones are disposable and cheap compared to the value of their load, so even if you send 100 drones and only 10 make it, it's still a viable and profitable method. The most successful method though is likely by using submarines. We've seen a lot of these semi-submersibles being caught because they are pretty easy to catch if you happen to fly by them, or simply through satellites or radars, because they stick up from the ocean like a sore thumb. But they're important because they can hold tons of cocaine, and it really sucks when they get caught, though it is still a numbers game. But the cartels still want to maximize their profit, so they've long been trying to get fully submersible subs, which we now know they have. It is almost impossible to find these subs once they're underwater, so they're almost bulletproof. But
The cartel now has fully submersible subs.
still one aspect of these submarines that makes them somewhat risky. Since if they do get caught, the operators might talk and snitch on the cartel. So the cartels are currently focusing heavily on developing remote-controlled submarines. We know this because they just seized a submarine in Colombia that had a Starlink antenna on it for communication. Yeah, it's insane the technological improvements these submarines have seen in just the last few years. And it makes sense, they're a key piece of the puzzle. But the cartels have realized something in recent years. It's really annoying to sell drugs made from plants that are at the mercy of Mother Nature. Oh, I'm sorry, that's Birdie. It's a CO2 monitor that hangs on the wall and is kind of cool. It looks like a bird, but it is a CO2 monitor. And basically when it falls down, it tells me when I need to air out the room, which I will do now. And basically when the CO2 levels drop enough, the bird is now gonna go up again. And ever since I got this bird, I haven't had any migraines and I sleep much better. So yeah, if you're interested in one of these, I'll leave a link down below in the description. And you can get a 10% discount as made from plants. So why not sell something that's synthetically made, more potent?
Yo, bro, have you, like, this is the one of the first time, because I'm like, is this an ad? Is this, okay, show me an ad? Should I skip this? Should I not skip this? And I'm like, I don't see any, any captions or anything, so it's probably not an ad, but I'm like, nah, it's an ad. After you said click down below and all that, I was like, okay, bye-bye.
So you need fewer and smaller shipments, as well as much cheaper to acquire. This is where methamphetamine, fentanyl, and China come into the picture. See, fentanyl is a synthetic opioid 50 times more potent than heroin and 100 times more potent than cocaine. And meth is 3 to 4 times more potent than cocaine, but its effects last 10 to 20 times longer. And they are much cheaper to produce than cocaine. There is one problem though. Mexico doesn't produce the necessary precursor chemicals to make meth or fentanyl, so the cartels needed a partner to be able to sell this stuff. That partner they found in China. Because it turns out Chinese chemical manufacturers and criminal networks supply most of the precursors for fentanyl and methamphetamine to the Mexican cartels. Here's how it works. These chemicals are shipped, often misdeclared, to Mexican Pacific ports such as Manzanillo or Lázaro Cárdenas. Then once on Mexican soil, they end up at labs where cartel chemists synthesize fentanyl and meth powder from the precursors. Now comes the interesting part though. Since fentanyl is 100 times more potent than cocaine, simple math tells us you need way less to fill the demand, creating an opportunity to be way more creative with how you package it, compared to cocaine. I think at this point we're all pretty familiar with the blocks of cocaine that get seized all the time.
Excuse me. That is crazy. Because it's crazy that like America hasn't really spun that narrative yet. That basically the fentanyl epidemic is being caused by China. Cause in a way you could see it as that, you know what I'm saying? You could usually spin it like that. So maybe they're just waiting for the right time, you know what I'm saying? But yeah. Knowing me, if I was the Chinese government, I'll do this purposely though, and then just blame it on one of the gangsters that's just loyal to the party. If we ever got caught.
But with fentanyl, it's a completely different game. See, instead of these obvious blocks, the cartels instead press the powder into pills that look exactly like painkillers, making them trivially easy to get over the border. Once there, the drug does horrible things. Due to the potency of fentanyl, it's very easy to overdose, and this explains why 74,000 Americans died from fentanyl in 2023, accounting for nearly 69% of all overdose deaths. It's a giant problem for America, but also the cartels, right? I mean, their customers are dying. Well, actually no. They make so much profit that it doesn't matter that a few of their customers die. But we still need to figure out the last piece of the puzzle in this whole scheme, and that's the profits. What are they going to do with these profits? I mean, they're making billions of dollars in the US, but how are they going to get them back to Mexico? That's the whole issue here. And laundering money has gotten exponentially more difficult as law enforcement and financial regulators worldwide tighten controls. But a new method has opened up. You're probably familiar with the traditional methods of laundering the money through businesses that naturally generate a lot of cash, like restaurants and casinos. They still do that, but the new method is really sneaky and is once again made possible by the Chinese. More specifically, Chinese underground bankers. Here's how it works. A cartel operative in Los Angeles is sitting on, let's say, $1 million in dirty cash. Rather than smuggling that money across the border and risking it getting seized, he contacts a Chinese broker working inside the US. That broker has clients. Those clients are usually incredibly wealthy Chinese individuals, whose goal is to move some money out of China. The Chinese individual is interested in doing this through a broker because there's a limit on how much money you can move out of China as an individual, standing at just $50,000. So, the broker connects both sides and the ingenious deal can take place. The cartel hands over $1 million in cash to the broker in the US, and the Chinese client sends the equivalent value in yuan to the broker's partner in China. The broker then arranges for the funds to be sent to one of the cartel's legitimate companies that simply sends an invoice to the Chinese broker for services. The legitimate company is obviously owned by the cartel, but through shell companies, so it can't be traced back to them. So that's how the money gets into the cartel's hands in Mexico, but you might be asking, what could the Chinese guy use $1 million in cash for? Well, the cash is laundered inside the US through...
I'm really sorry, guys. I'm kind of sleepy right now, and like I still need to make like a few more videos. So let me just get some more to be back real quick. I'm gonna edit this out. Alright, I'm back.
Traditional methods that I mentioned earlier, but very importantly, stays.
Yeah. Let's carry on.
Getting money laundered and then transferred out of the US is very difficult since every cartel-linked person in the US is a DEA target. So yeah, it's really clever, and US officials call it one of the most powerful money laundering engines operating today. It's fast, nearly untraceable, and completely scalable. In fact, it's now so effective that Chinese money brokers have become the go-to launderers for both the Sinaloa and the CJNG cartels, replacing older laundering methods almost entirely. And with the wealth they've generated, they have unimaginable power. Power they use to gain more money by extorting legitimate businesses, something I alluded to earlier in the video, and I'll get into it a bit later, I promise, but also they want to get rid of everyone that challenges or questions them. This is why Mexico is one of the deadliest countries in the world for journalists. Reporters who investigate cartel dealings or government collusion do so at enormous personal risk. The consequence is widespread self-censorship in the media.
I'm not gonna lie to you though. Like the people from Mexico that really do speak out on the cartels and all these people, bro, are one of the most bravest people I know. Excuse me. Most bravest people. I know I wouldn't do that. I ain't doing that, bro. I ain't doing that. I'm gonna admit that. I'm not one of those people. It's just what it is.
One veteran Mexican journalist put it, quote, "You cannot count on the government. Self-censorship is the only thing that will keep you safe." An important statistic shows less than 1% of the time a journalist gets killed, someone gets convicted, showcasing how untouchable they really are, even when they destroy their position in broad daylight. In cartel-dominated areas, which is pretty much everywhere at this point, newspapers and radio stations end up as virtual mouthpieces for the criminals, only publishing stories favorable to them or none at all regarding their activities. Now, I mentioned that the cartels are practically untouchable, and I want to show you how that is true even when you catch them. See, even if you jail them, you can't take away their power. In Mexico, it is well documented that, quote, other major traffickers have continued to run their businesses from behind bars, including Joaquin El Chapo Guzman. Now, I know I haven't really introduced him yet, but he is the guy who founded the Sinaloa cartel. But anyway,
He still runs it. I really thought like after going to the trunk, he stopped running it. Which, honestly speaking, now that I think about it, that was a stupid thought, but, huh.
he managed the Sinaloa cartel from inside the prison, and he even orchestrated his own escape. Twice. From inside the prison. He escaped 2 maximum security Mexican prisons in 2001 and 2015. And after his second escape, which pretty much humiliated authorities in Mexico, Mexico extradited him to the US in 2017 to finally cut off his ability to direct operations. He's really the perfect example of what happens all the time in Mexico, Central and Latin America. Officials and guards are often bribed or threatened, or both, into cooperating with the cartels. As one extensive study noted, prison guards in Latin America are poorly paid, undertrained, and, quote, vulnerable to threats, which, when dealing with organized crime structures, can extend beyond the prison walls. In practice, this means guards who refuse to assist criminal bosses risk the lives of themselves and their families. There are numerous instances of guards who refuse to facilitate corruption being subject to reprisals outside of the prisons. The real thing is, being in prison for them is usually more safe than being on the outside, since prisons are mostly separated by gangs, so they have no competition in jail and no one is able to get them from the outside, so they're safe. And only when they get extradited to the US has it been effective and stopped them from actually being able to scheme things from inside the prison walls, and that's pretty embarrassing. But I think it's finally time I tell you about the new businesses the cartels have been.
I don't know though. Because I did hear that the Sinaloa cartel is operating in the US. So, how can we really rely on that information? I'm not quite sure. But yeah, man, not a bad video. If you want to watch the rest of the video, check it out. But yeah, man, bro, I'm about to take a little bit of 10-minute nap, bro. I'm gonna get back to making more videos, but for now, thank you for watching the rest of the video. Thank you for chilling with your Owen. Comment, like, subscribe, and until next time, I've been the Lost Owen. How am I messing this one up as well? My lord.